Security often involves mathematical functions like factorization that are really easy to do, but very hard to undo. Now, quantum computing comes along, and all of a sudden, these previously difficult mathematical functions suddenly become much easier and quicker to unpick, and that just undermines the whole security premise of those. And this affects not only blockchain, but any mechanism that uses traditional cryptography approaches. So what can we do about this? So the first thing is you can develop new algorithms that are essentially quantum proof. And lots of universities and academic organizations and vendors are beginning to look at these kinds of capabilities. The other thing to remember is that quantum computing itself may actually be an answer to the threat. Quantum cryptography basically creates a future-proof cryptography mechanism that is immune to being unpicked by quantum computing. So quantum is both a challenge to existing traditional mechanisms for cryptography, but also provides the way out of the dilemma. It's one of these things that we're looking at evolving over the next 5 to 10 years, but organizations really should start thinking about this in the short term. The impact of automation on trust and security really depends on what the automation is doing. If it's a relatively simple chatbot, for example, then really the only consideration there is what data is being captured from the end user. If the automation is making decisions on actions that are about individuals, then that is regulated under GDPR. It's called profiling. And you really do need to pay a lot of attention to that kind of activity. So GDPR doesn't prevent that kind of automation, but it does make sure that you tell the end user that they are being profiled in this way, and in fact they have an option to opt out of that. I guess the golden rule is be completely transparent, and if in doubt, conduct a privacy impact assessment. Actually, there's little evidence to suggest that there was a substantial slowdown across the board in cyber hacking over the COVID period. In fact, there is some evidence that state-sponsored attacks have actually increased over the period as government agencies, particularly medical agencies, have been distracted by public health concerns. I guess in short, it's really too early to be definitive about the overall situation, but I think the best we can say is it's probably a mixed picture at the moment. I guess there are three things broadly to look at. One is the legality situation. So in Europe, we have GDPR. We also have local labour laws. And sometimes they're very strict in terms of what information can be gathered by employers of employees. The second thing is, what are the existing working practices that are common in the countries and companies that you're gathering this information from? So are there unions involved? Are there workers' councils involved? And sometimes workers' councils are very powerful. I guess the third thing, and maybe this is the big issue, what is the overall perception of the workforce and society in general in tracking activity and behaviour? And as the question highlights, we've seen this being brought into sharp focus, where we have an application that is designed to protect public health, but there are questions about privacy and which should have precedence. Personally, I would have thought that public health would take precedence, but that appears not to be the case in a wide number of situations and countries. So I think there's an ongoing debate about the trade-offs between privacy and public health. I think at the moment privacy is winning. I think more generally in the workplace, tracking is generally in Europe not received very well. In the US, there's a much more liberal approach, and it's probably more acceptable there.